name is Mahesh Tanaikar. I play guitar for Indus. We started off as Rock Machine many years ago, around 84, 85, when myself and Jayesh, we used to hang around on KC College steps, and there was this promoter, this guy who wanted to organize a show, and he came to us and said, I want to put this rock show together. Do you have a band? We didn't have a band, so we decided to put a band together. So we had heard of a guy called Mark Selvin. So we went and asked him whether he'd like to play with us. He said yes. We didn't have a singer, so he recommended a guy called Ian Santamaria and a drummer called Suresh Badrija. So we put this little band together and we played this show for around 35 people or something, and it was great fun. We had a great time playing, so we decided to keep it going, and then we did a couple of other shows. Few months down the line, the singer Ian Santamaria had to leave the band because of work commitments. So I happened to run into Uday Benigil again on the steps of KC College. There was a college talent contest which he was taking part in, and I heard him sing there. So I thought, okay, why don't you try and come and hang with us and audition and see if you'd like to sing with us. So, and he came and everyone loved him.
Hi, I'm Uday Benigil, and I joined Rock Machine actually at the end of 1984 and played my first gig with them in January of '85.
Hi, I'm Zubin Balapuria, and I joined Rock Machine I think probably in mid-1985 or late 1985. And I actually met Uday. We used to do some college shows together. And I remember he just called me one day out of the blue and he said, I'm jamming with this band called Rock Machine. We're looking for a keyboard player, so would you like to come over and play with us? And I had seen the band perform just 2 or 3 months prior to that at Rang Bhavan in Bombay.
I guess the earliest song that we were pushing pretty heavily to the audience was Top of the Rock, which Mark Selvin had written, and Rock and Roll Renegade, which Mahesh and I had written together. I think Mark was really the driving force behind the idea of us doing our own songs, but we were all convinced pretty quickly, because if you're going to make music, you might as well make music that's your own, because as a musician you want to express yourself, and there's no better way than by writing your own music and writing your own songs and composing your own music and stuff. So in the mid to late 80s, the whole scene in India was the audience expected bands to play cover songs, popular songs by other bands. They didn't have the opportunity to see the British and rock bands that they love to listen to. So they expected the Indian bands that they were going out to see to be playing those popular tunes. As far as we were concerned, yeah, we started out doing that. We were happy doing that, but we really wanted to write our own songs, and we started sneaking them in between the cover songs and lying about the fact that they were by some other band, because we wanted to overcome the prejudice against an Indian band doing original music.
The thing about those days was, one of the big problems was equipment. There was no gear that you could go and buy. In fact, you couldn't even buy strings. You had to wait for somebody to go abroad to order a set of strings. I remember the first keyboard I bought, I was doing recordings in the studio to sort of supplement my income, and I had to go to Hong Kong. I had to fly to Hong Kong to actually buy my first keyboard. And I went there for 5 days, and I sat in a music store for 5 days actually checking out every piece of equipment there. I didn't see anything of Hong Kong except the airport, the hotel room, and this one store. It was tough, but you learned from the experience of really actually getting shafted, not getting paid. You realize that if you really wanted to sort of set a benchmark, get a little professional, travel a little comfortably, or you had to take care of these things. You just couldn't expect to land up and expect them to be done.
One of the things we learned also was who should be doing the negotiating in the band. Because the one time Mahesh was allowed to negotiate on behalf of the band, he quoted 3,000 rupees for a concert and said that it was negotiable.
That's my job, negotiate.
3,000 rupees, and it's negotiable, and all of us were in shock.
I remember the first Delhi IIT show I did. We came back to Mark's house and we did some accounts, and at the end of it, Mahesh owed the band 40 rupees.
We used to have something called band account, which was kind of, making us feel good that actually we are not really paying for it. It's going to be band account, but actually we used to spend the money, this anticipation of future profits, we used to call it. So it's to go and drink and spend the money before we actually had the show. So
Sort
the money.
of this thing that big banks are doing all over the world today.
The sinking fund, literally.
So when we actually did the show, we were actually the red. We didn't, get any money.
And then of course, then there was the album, and we were actually, it was a pretty interesting, very interesting time for us, because we were approached by a gentleman called Mr. R.V. Pandit, who was actually a publisher, a book publisher.
He bought CBS.
Yeah, he started CBS India, so he was distributing CBS America's music in India, which is Michael Jackson and Madonna and that kind of stuff. But he was very keen to promote Indian talent as well, and he'd heard of us, and this elderly gentleman signed a deal with us to record an album of all original rock music made in India. And that's when we recorded the album Rock and Roll Renegade. And just being in there, all of us in the studio recording this stuff and listening to these songs coming down on tape was just a great, great feeling. And finally, when we put the album together and put it out, it was great. It really felt good.
In 1990, we thought it was time to do another album. We had some songs together, we had production ideas by then, having worked, all of us worked in the studios. We decided to release an album that was sort of more professional, more slick. The first video was actually Renegade, even though it was after the second album. And so that first video was shot by Mahesh Mathai, and was really on a shoestring budget, and he did a fantastic job of that. That got some airplay on Doordarshan. But I think what really kicked it off was finally when MTV came in, they were looking for Indian bands, they were looking for sort of local acts that could perform, play. We did our first real sort of video, which was Top of the Rock. That really, really did a lot for us, because now you had an album, you had video coverage, when you put on the TV and a song comes on air 4 and 5 times, it's really a big thing.
I think there was also a sense of pride amongst Indian viewers.
Yeah, I think that was it. For the first time they saw a band which, they felt like, because that's the sort of feedback we constantly got and still get, is that we kind of kicked off something there. audiences started really, getting larger. We were doing a lot more shows all over. We did a couple of international shows. By then, we'd already done a Festival of India in the Soviet Union. We did about 5 or 6 shows there. We started touring the Middle East. So a whole lot of stuff started happening for us in the early 90s, and I think it all got sort of kicked off with the second album and the video. Yeah, well, then there was, suddenly we found a picture of us in Time magazine, and then there was some article in New York Times, and then I remember at one point some Japanese reporter interviewing us for some Japanese magazine.
Musical Express.
There was something with the BBC, and also suddenly we were, getting all this international exposure.
Pretty Child was actually featured on our second album, The Second Coming. For some reason it went unnoticed at that point. We always loved the song, we thought it would make a great video, so we asked Shabir and Namita to direct it. And they just went way out of their way. And we were so happy that we were part of that. We really liked the video when we saw it, but we were completely unprepared for the kind of reaction that followed from it. It's a little difficult to be objective about the stuff that you're involved in yourself. But when the moment MTV got the video, I got a call same day from them and said, we're so blown by this video, we're putting it on air immediately. And I guess things sort of peaked out at that point because the publicity was huge. The Video Music Award happened that year. And I think that's when the name change happened as well, no?
Yeah.
That's when we changed the name from Rock Machine to Indiscreet. We had hired Russell to sort of represent us outside the country. We wanted to take the band and our music beyond the borders of India, if we could. And Russell's first thing was, and he said this very gently because we were already an established band, established in India at least, and he's saying, I think you guys, what do you think of changing the name of the band? And we first thought it was a preposterous idea. Why would you do that when you're already so well known? And his thing was, it gives you an opportunity. He said, look at the kind of attention you've got from a song like Pretty Child. He's saying Pretty Child has gone beyond this college rock act. You guys were really popular, but Top of the Rock was all great fun and everything else. But that's just like a straight ahead rock band out of college, very professional and slick sounding. But a name like Rock Machine sort of narrows you down to a particular kind of music, a particular style. And he's saying this will give you an opportunity to sort of widen what you can do with your music and make it more interesting to an international audience. And we kind of sort of thought about that and drew on the wisdom of what he said. And I think liters of alcohol were consumed when we were trying to think of a new name. And we almost became some of the worst names a band could ever give itself. Fortunately, sobriety prevailed the next day and we threw out those names. And after much deliberation, I think we all agreed on Indiscreet. We liked that name.
I think it came from the word indiscreet.
Indiscreet, yeah. We were playing with the word Indus and then it came Indiscreet and then somebody said
just came up with Indiscreet. So.
And yeah, and creed just made sense because it's a representation of what you believe and what you stand for. So it was subtle enough and yet made an allusion to where we were from. So it gave us a sense of identity. And I think it rolls well.
we had never featured anything Indian in our music. Not in the language, not in the style of playing, not in the instrumentation. But I think it was Mark Menezes' idea to introduce or put in tabla into Pretty Child. And at first, I think we were all skeptical because we didn't want to sort of, push this down, push our sort of Indianness into the song just to make it sort of, appealing to people for whatever reasons. But we thought we'd give it a shot, and it really worked out very beautifully. And also, I think at that time with Russell representing us, and he kept saying, you've got to break out of India now, and the best way to do it is just to go to America and record an album, and there has to be some kind of Indianness in it. Otherwise, you're just going to be another band, that's going to sound like any other, like the 10 million American bands that there are. And there was, I think, a conscious effort then to start introducing an Indian element in the songs. It was not pushed or sort of shoved into the song. When we tried and we felt it wasn't working, it was thrown out immediately. So I think the third album had it had a tabla on it, it had sarangi, any other flute, basuri. So it had some sort of Indian overtones subtly put into that, and I think that was a big shift in the sound, because up until then we were sort of a classic hard rock band or whatever you want to call it.
But we tried differently as well, because when we used tabla in Trapped, it was actually only the baya, not the actual tabla part, but the bass drum element of the tabla, the baya. So the whole rhythmic pattern is played by that and followed by that, and you never hear the chati. So we try to do things
very differently from the sort of conventional way of using Indian instruments. And I think it really worked with Trapped as well. And that tune really was one of our favorite tunes. It would go down very well. And that became, I think, the first video from the third album.
Trapped in my body, trapped in my soul, trapped in my body, and I think I'm getting old. Trapped in a dream and you can't even scream, 'cause there's no one ever here. Strapped to your seat and you can't find your feet. Will this nightmare never stop? All alone, strange city, hot crowded afternoon. I've been stranded in the darkness. I can't see, there's no moon. Trapped in my body, trapped in my soul. Chased in a dream by a freshly rested team of black horses, drawing a hearse, crossing swords on the bridge of rewards. There's no winner or fat birds. All alone, strange city, hot crowded.
Making the Trapped video was actually quite a bit of fun, because we shot it at a really beautiful location, Janjira Fort, which is in the Murud Janjira area, which is near Alibag. So we look a little funny in those monks'
Cassocks.
cassocks. Yeah.
When we came back, a lot of people, a lot of musicians, friends asked what the experience was like, recording their great gear, etc., all this, whatever. But I really felt that one of the things that was really helped was that you were very focused in doing your songs and your album. There were no distractions. Even your family can be a distraction, when you're back in Bombay or wherever you are recording, or if you have other work or you're hanging out with friends. Here we were in an alien city, we had very little money, so there was really nothing to do except go back to the apartment, sleep there, get up in the morning, go to the studio and record your songs.
I think with each of the albums we tried to do something a little different. With Rock and Roll Renegade, it was much raw, it was really a fresh, really young band doing something for the first time, so there was a real raw energy about it. By the second coming, we'd gotten a little more savvy about studio production, so the production quality was a lot slicker. And by the time we went in to do the third album as Indus, the style of the music had changed a bit, but also going out to LA and recording with a really good producer, a guy called John Bogosian, in Los Angeles, was getting that really beautiful live band sound. It was a great experience. I mean, personally for me, it was fantastic to go in there